PerformX sat down with Mullane, founder of Keepme, to preview what is one of the most talked about topics of PerformX 2024, AI. Artificial intelligence certainly isn't going anywhere, and its growth has skyrocketed in the last few years. It's gone from what Ian described as a competitive advantage to now being something that gyms should ignore at their peril. Hear his entrepreneurial story and get an inside scoop in what's coming down the line, plus what's already possible when it comes to AI in the fitness industry. Let's get into it, and make sure you secure your tickets for PerformX 2024, where you can watch Ian live on stage. Ian, welcome to PerformX.
Thank you.
Pleasure to have you on today. We are obviously previewing your live talk at PerformX in March, in a few weeks' time. But I think having known you, spoken to you for about 4 years now, and done a lot of research pre-interview, I think there's a lot our audience can take from yourself, both it as being an AI frontrunner in the fitness industry, but also your serial entrepreneurial story. So just to start off with, how did you, I think it'd be interesting to understand how you went from a CEO in the kind of banking world to end up in the fitness industry.
There's nothing really dramatic about that story beyond the fact that I think when I got to where I did in corporate life, I looked around the table and I was no longer inspired to continue with it. It didn't really represent the values which I hoped to foster personally. And I was at a stage in my life where I wanted to be able to take some chances, understand my own capabilities, and start to build a business without the necessity to stay within the confines of a corporate culture. I think is probably the best way of looking at it from there. So it really is no more dramatic than that. I had obviously always aspired to a particular role. I felt that I had achieved that role, and like many things in life, it's not always the success, it's the journey, and I probably had missed the fact that the journey was the fun part, and when I actually arrived at the destination, it wasn't quite there. So you suggested they're a serial entrepreneur. The suggestion I would put in there is that's on the basis that because it's a serial aspect, I'm never looking to end the journey. I'm looking to stay on the journey.
And a lot of that has been built on fixing your own problems, right? Fixing the problems you come up against.
Yes, every business that I've had so far has only ever initially been set around fixing my own problems. So if you want to go back to the very beginning, how I got involved in fitness in the first place, which was one of the first businesses, I wanted to start a gym. I didn't look to start a gym in a commercial aspect of it in any shape or form. My ambition at the time was to find a facility that met my requirements, and I happened to find a very large space. It was in Singapore, which is where I was based at the time, and it was mispriced. And in my personal opinion, they had underpriced it, and it's 20,000 square feet. And remembering this was myself and possibly a few friends that were going to work out in here. So I went home and I said to my wife, I'd found this beautiful 20,000 square foot. And she said, you're not having a 20,000 square foot gym. So she gave me 1,500 square foot, and we used the remainder for a big children's indoor playground, which was phenomenally successful because we had 2 children. We were in Singapore, and we didn't have the capacity because of the heat, etc., for them to play outside to the same degree. So that met that, and then I got those 1,500 square feet from that particular side. If you look at LocalWise, which was a social media analytics platform, which I disposed of in 2020, at that time, we were working for FedEx on the ATP Tour, Samsung and Chelsea, we were working with Formula One. And with all of those organizations, social media was becoming a very large part of the sponsorship activation. But how do you measure the effectiveness of that? So LocalWise came around by us looking at building a tool that would allow agencies to value the contribution that the social campaigns were having, and thus there. And Keepme was no more than, as I was working on LocalWise, the Vander.fit, like any other business in fitness, it was at 10 years by then. We had grown exponentially and continuously, but I was looking a few years ahead and I was thinking, can I really sustain this growth Are we going to have the capacity to do so at sensible price levels? Is the acquisition cost per member going to be higher? Is competition increasing? And costs in Singapore only ever go one direction, which is upwards. So with that being the case, I looked at retention, and every aspect of retention, every paper, whether I read academic or industry experts I looked at, it was all the same old stuff, and it didn't really seem to attack the primary problem, which was, how do you predict in a fashion that allows you to make a difference to the eventual outcome that the member is going to stay or go?
Brilliant. And before we dig into, obviously, AI, I just wanted to, something that really fascinated me about yourself and your routines is this dedication to reading, and like you read sort of 80 books a year and spend 2 to 3 hours, literally block off time to read 2 to 3 hours a day. Talk me through that a little bit.
You have got, in most cases, if you are selective about what you're reading, you have got somebody's 10 to 20 years worth of experience placed into 300 pages. And if I am intellectually curious about any subject matter whatsoever, then a book will be the first place that I will look to go. I may later on look at, should we say, supporting that with video or other aspect of it. But book requires the discipline for me to put myself into an environment where I can focus, right, and in-depth understanding of the actual subject matter. So it's something which, myself and indeed the team at Keepme, it's something which, we push, as one of the main things that will happen, because the only way we will keep up, the only way you learn to develop new, whether it be new habits, new skills, new understandings, is, in my opinion, is by reading. And as much as I put that amount of time into reading on a daily basis, I am also incredibly disciplined about what other media I get exposed to. So I don't watch or listen to any news whatsoever. It's complete crap. I'm no interest in it whatsoever. I don't read any newspapers whatsoever. I am an economist from training, so The Economist is the only newspaper that I will read. And if there is something going on in the world, such as, whether it be the Russia-Ukraine aspect of it, or what's going on in the Middle East, then I am going to find the best books on the subject and learn through that. And that's exactly the way my approach is on virtually anything that I do.
Fair play. Yeah, fair play. And we're a big advocate for learning and development with what we're creating with PerformX, which is obviously why we've got you involved in our schedule. Our advisory board have been putting together the sort of ultimate blueprint for education. And on that subject of books, is there a go-to book you'd recommend someone who was wanting to tap into AI and uncover what that's all about?
Previously I would have said yes, but the fact is that this industry is changing so dramatically that even the books, let's say I read 7 or 8 books last year, possibly more, around artificial intelligence or around the application of artificial intelligence. I will have taken maybe 10 to 15% learning from each one of those overall. However, the speed of development that's happening at the moment means that you certainly won't even have the type of terminology. There's a book, and I think you and I have spoken about it before. There's a book called Prediction Machines, which I would suggest people read to get a good understanding of the basic framework, particularly around machine learning. It's highly approachable. It's certainly not geared. You don't need to have an understanding of calculus or math or any other aspect of it, but it gives you an understanding so you can work out where machine learning is and will continuously be applied going forward. But I think currently what I would do would be to actually just utilize the tools available. There will not be a necessity for anybody to understand how algorithms are constructed, right, or to have an in-depth knowledge of large language models, right? That's just not going to be the case. What we do need to have an understanding of is how they can be applied and what type of AI we would apply to each type of problem that we've got. That comes through practice, and I would suggest that that's probably the better way to spend your time, is to look at the tools that are available out there and actually engage with them and actually try them out, because in that way you'll learn the application of them and you don't have to worry too much about the theoretical.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. So the books are almost out of date before they're already
Correct.
published, sort of thing. Yeah.
I have one with me at the moment, which I'm going through AI 2041, and he is out by 25 years because we're already there, and and that's no problem. When it was written in 2022, 2021. It was a world not considering generative AI to any great degree at that stage of things, or that we'd see GPT-5 and a few other developments which are coming out this year. So I think with that being the case, we should always look to use the tools rather than look at the hypotheticals. If you're really interested and if you've got a leaning towards it, go to the academic papers. There's a number of, there's Ben's AI Bites, which is a newsletter which consolidates, but it is going to consolidate, it's on a daily basis, but it is going to consolidate the heavier duty aspects of it. So, the latest performance from a llama model or that type of stuff, you can get into it quite easily.
Nice. And I think we obviously originally collected about 4 years ago, and I remember you saying AI is coming. And it sounded like this mystical term at the time. And I think there's other things that were kind of flying around at the time, like the metaverse and things like that. But I think AI is obviously now a word everyone understands. It's here. So first of all, what's your prediction for the next 4 years?
Anyone who makes predictions would be absolutely mad. Because what I think we all need to remember is we didn't have ChatGPT 14 months ago. And if you're involved in the visual world at the moment, and you take a look at the likes of Midjourney, that looked like science fiction 12 months ago. Yeah. The idea that I could use natural language to build any type of image whatsoever. What we're going to see in 2024 is two big developments which I think people should be aware of. Is first and foremost, we will see GPT-5, which will eventually end up in ChatGPT. We currently use something called GPT-4. Now, this is going to be a significant difference because it's what we call a multimodal model, which means that it can utilize text, image, audio, and video. It's also going to have increased reasoning capabilities, as well as having massive more reliability. Now, the focus from the OpenAI team is going to be on the ease of integration. So what that means is that my prediction by the end of 2024 is there will be no tool you use on a daily basis which will not have the capability to be able to call up the services of a large language model. So that's the first one. I think that the second one, which is another big thing, which isn't getting the noise I would expect, but I think that's going to change shortly, is we know what a large language model is, which is generative AI. It's the ChatGPT aspect. We're going to have what's called a large action model. Right? And what a large action model is going to be able to do, it's going to be able to make decisions and complete tasks. So it's a software agent that sits on top of a large language model. And what that's going to mean is AI is going to go from assisting you in a task to actually being able to autonomously make decisions on your behalf and complete the task. And that is a massive change. There was a device released at CES in January called the Rabbit R1. And it is the first piece of kit. It is an AI-powered assistant. And it is a tool that uses large action models. And it's the first one to do so. I'd recommend anyone goes to YouTube and looks at the launch, because not only will it help you to understand why a large action model is going to change the way we work with AI, but it is also, I suspect, the form factor that smartphones will be within 2 years as well. Because if you think about it, there is absolutely no reason whatsoever why when we look at those screens, we have all of those icons. When we can use natural language to be able to type in whatever it is that we want to do, and that large action model and those large language models can actually do that for us. The Rabbit R1 is done by Teenage Engineering, which if you're in the audio world, you'll know is a very strong engineering outfit. But the actual product itself is what I believe the form factor will be going forward for the mobile phone. Its capabilities will also be the way that operators will want to understand people are going to engage going forward so that they can set themselves up appropriately.
And on that note, I heard you say something really interesting that was where you wouldn't even, for example, wouldn't need to open your Whoop app, or the phone could tell you exactly what, how your day should look, basically. So can you talk me through that kind of futuristic day in the life of a fitness consumer?
Well, and I think we're already seeing, if you look at the day in the life concept, all of the aspects of it are already in place. It's just a case that there's been nothing to bring them together, because in many cases they're built in a garden. So you've got your Apple Health, you've got your Whoop, you've got all of your different aspects of your fitness in there. But if we integrate, which a large language model would, if we integrate the capability to do everything from our diary and our scheduling through to an understanding about what we're eating, what we're drinking, how we're sleeping, right? Whether that be through our Whoop or whether it be through the other aspect of it. And then we start to push those through into, Gym Pass and Class Pass and that type of aspect. The challenge that has been in place has always been around the inability for these applications to talk together. A large language model doesn't really care how you are. As long as you are open up to it, then it will go out and find. So it can train itself on all of this available data. So I envision a future where we will have, well, I don't envision it as in the future. I think the rabbit hole one's probably a good indication of how it happens already, where the device will know based on where you are, based on how you are, and based on what you've done, what your day should look like for you to meet the goal that you want to meet. So, we talk about our Whoops and how Whoop will tell us whether we're in a certain recovery state and how that should drive our particular activity during that day. But what we could use with a large language model is it could look at that, it could look at our location, it could look at what our hydration levels were at that stage, it could look at our nutrition, and it could guide us to doing the optimal behavior to continue at that optimal level throughout the stage. Probably sounds a bit science fiction at the moment. People will talk about, well, how would you do the hydration aspect? Well, I'm not sure if anyone's seen the patches you can now get that will actually tell you to what degree your electrolytes are in or out of balance on that side. I will admit to being a geek who wears a continuous glucose monitor as well. So, I've got a very good understanding from a blood glucose aspect. When you marry those two aspects, and then you marry with my sleep, and you marry with my HRV, and you marry with my heart rate, and then you also add in other aspects, which is user inputted on that particular side, plus my location, plus my schedule, you have got the capacity to start being informed at a level that we can't even imagine. But let's give ourselves a break and understand that even 3 or 4 years ago, if we were made aware that we would have devices on our wrists that would have the capability to give us the biomeasurements that they do even now, we'd have seen that as being more sports science. Nowadays, we carry around in our watches and our Whoops and our wearables the same type of technology that a sports scientist in a Premier League football team would have had no more than 3-4 years ago.
So the fitness industry is notoriously slow to adapt innovation. How quickly are you seeing an appetite to embrace AI?
I think it depends on where you're talking about. The UK has not been anywhere near as fast as the US, and I think GDPR and data may have played a part in that, or at least a reluctance for them to engage. You can ask me the question, it's a completely false impression that it should in any way dictate, because there's many methodologies to make sure that GDPR compliance is stayed with. When we set up Keepme, we made a deliberate policy of not engaging with the UK operators. I mean, UK Active would tell you exactly that they couldn't get us to engage. And that was because we didn't believe that the appetite was here. And we also felt that one of the major components of success in any AI-driven model is data, and that the data was held hostage by the existing technologies that most leisure operators were utilizing at that time. In 2023, we saw 6 public operators engage with Keepme, and the likes of London Borough of Southwark, Lambton Leisure, Brio, BH Live, Dragonfly, Inverclyde up in Scotland. All of these organizations have embraced the capability of being able to utilize artificial intelligence. I think listen, there's an inevitability about what's going to happen here. That, you know, any delusion that, you know, that this is going back into the box is just ridiculous. And I, you know, I expect even now in some of the conversations that I have with people that they suggest that will be the case. And, you know, I have been in conversations in the last few years where people have said it'll never take off. Well, no, I don't think there's going to be a value for that particular aspect. But for every technical revolution that comes around, that's generally what does tend to happen, whether it be the internet, whether it be web, whether it be mobile. Most operators are going to find that AI is already part of their everyday technical stack, because AI is often front and center, but it's mostly working quietly in the background. And within their operations, whether they know it or not, there will be repetitive tasks and aspects of it which will already be handled. That hopefully will build the confidence up. But I think the biggest change is going to be from the technical providers, companies like ourselves, because if you're not understanding about how this technology is going to change the way that software is designed, built, and delivered, then you're going to find yourself struggling. So my bigger concern is not the adoption by UK operators, it is the adoption by other technical solution providers in the market that will end up being the reason why an operator cannot engage with artificial intelligence. And that is a concern.
Right. And how, I guess, essential do you think it is that a gym owner or operator lean into AI and not kind of bury their head in the sand, as you say?
I think that it'll be incredibly challenging to not do so anyway, but currently, no, 12 months ago, maybe even have to change my 2023 strapline, because in 2023, I always said, currently it's a competitive advantage, soon it's going to be a competitive necessity. I'm privileged to sit on the board of Gym Nation, a multi-site operator in the UAE that, you know, since 2018 has grown from scratch to a 62,000 member business across 11 sites. They, from the very beginning, two proud Northerners who run that business as well, and you know, they from the very beginning set out to ensure that data, AI, and indeed digital was one of the primary pillars that they would build that business from on that particular side. They are at the innovative side, and we could talk about some of the applications they use it for, but at the other aspect of the business, the only way that we are going to, as an industry, be able to provide the personalization that the consumer sees in so many other aspects of their consumer journey, whether that be in retail or whether that be insurance or be in telco, is going to be by the adoption of AI. Right? We expect as consumers now that when a brand engages with us, it engages with us on a personalized basis, taking into account the information that we've either provided or that it assumes, so that the service matches our expectations. And with the competitive environment that exists within the fitness industry, there are multiple organizations of choice that we can choose to go to. So if they don't lean in, if they don't take the opportunity, which will help them refine their business, make it more operationally efficient, probably make it a better environment to work in, but as importantly, I think, or most importantly, give them the capacity to personalize the experience to the end user, then I think that they will find that they will become quietly irrelevant, but at a pace that has not been seen with any of the previous technical revolution. So we're not talking the newspapers from the internet. We're not even talking about the impact that mobile had on that aspect of it. But let's be fair, if they don't adopt this particular technology, or at least start to have an opinion on how they can leverage it, they will look at their product in 2 or 3 years' time, and they won't be able to draw a comparison against some competitors.
Wow. Yeah. And unpacking that in terms of a case study, a practical example, I think I've read a lot about on kind of how you're helping, obviously, retention, but equally the sales. Mm-hmm. Can we dig into how does the tool retain members? How does that work?
Okay, so the premise is that within every club there is a data set, basic in nature, which will have the age of the member, the attendance of the member. How did the member find us? Do they come in via Facebook? What do they pay us? What type of membership do they have? That type of data set is fuel for a machine learning methodology called random forest. Now, random forest, this is going to sound technical, but it's not. And then you'll realize that AI people are not the greatest marketeers. They're simple in their approach. So basically, you take that data set, and you know decision trees where yes, no, yes, no. Okay, so we would take 80% of that data set, and we would have the outcomes in there. And we would tell the model, there's the outcomes, build the decision trees to get back up to the original side. So that model will then build itself a lot of decision trees until it gets to the fact, did the member stay or did it go? It will do it by randomly pushing together every single data item. So it'll put, did age play a factor? Did membership type play a factor? Did lead source play a factor? Did class type play a factor? All of those different things are pushed together. On 42 data items, so age, membership type, etc., a machine learning model will build 8.8 million decision trees per member on that side, okay? So decision trees, it does them randomly, which is why the random come from, and what do we call a lot of trees? A forest, which is why it's called random forest, right? Not one of those decision trees is statistically powerful, but it's where when you add together all of those decision trees, we get to a highly accurate prediction. It's not unusual for us at the moment to operate at 98% plus. Now, this is what we're not talking about. We're not talking about a member who's in their final 30 days of membership, who's not been seen for the previous 60. Anybody can work that out, right? Yeah, they're not coming back. We're talking about a member that's possibly in their first 2 months, 3 months of membership. If I went and said to you, we think you're going to leave in 10 months' time, I'm just bloody joy. I'm not going anywhere, right? But the fact is, the signal's in the noise. We can see it already. And our belief has always been that for you to put in place a program that's going to improve retention, it needs to start with an understanding of what probability is that member's even going to leave. So that's exactly what we have in place there with that model. That model has the capacity to be able to predict to a high degree of accuracy whether you will stay or go when it's your next choice. And in doing so, through the random forest, in doing so, we can then plan a retention program on what actions to take to change that possible outcome.
I think it's fascinating as well about how you highlighted, I guess, a lot of gyms or operators have a very mapped out customer journey, but how much of the time that actually happens is a completely different story.
Yeah, so. It's an interesting. I have seen very elaborate flow charts passed to me over the years, and I must have seen 150 of these, and some of them are just artistically quite beautiful, and they clearly have spent an awful lot of time on building them, but the probability that they happen is close to zero. And that's because in the vast majority of cases, human intervention is required, and sickness, work priorities, etc., or disparate systems as well. Or the most basic premise is that, so you've identified that a member is possibly at risk, so you take that action, and if they take that action, then they move on, and if they don't take action, then they don't move on. Well, what happens to them then? No one's thought about that one. Or what happens if they don't do any of those two and they do that, right? And this is where AI and automation play a part. Any business that's performing at a high level in a scalable environment, beyond 150 members, 200 members, needs to use automation, A, to make sure that personalization happens, but B, for certainty. When we've looked at programs where retention has improved dramatically, it's not been because of the actual engagement that we've served in. It's been because of the consistency of making sure on a regular basis that something actually happened, that you engaged with them, not what you engaged with them. Of course, when you add in the strong engagement stuff on top of the consistency of actually engaging, you will see, rocket fuel, it's going to go even better. But most of these programs, even when I sit down with large organizations, they will give me the 30-day or the 60-day or the 90-day member journey and ask them about what's going on the 180-day or the 270 or the 360. And the answer I will generally get, and I understand why, is very simply because by that stage, the habit will have formed And on that basis, we don't think that we need to pursue it much further after that. So you point out to them that at the same time as the habit formed, a new facility with new shinier toys opened up just across the road, and we're giving them the membership on a half of the price basis. Or that something happened, right? They were sick, they were ill, they broke their leg, they went on holiday, something else happened on that particular aspect of it. It's not because the habit, it's because technically people haven't found a way to be able to deliver a full-time, automated, personalized, relevant engagement all of the time throughout the membership.
So obviously you started out as a retention tool, and I think as you've co-created the product almost based on feedback. And I think sales has always been ends up being a big focus for operators. So I think how does your tool support that sales process, and how did that come about?
Well, it came about because when we're having the conversations, everybody was a huge fan of what capabilities we provided in retention, but we generally found that acquisition dominated everything. One of the questions which I stopped asking when I was in potential client meetings was, I would say, who's responsible for retention? And the general answer I would get 9 times out of 10 was, everybody's responsible for retention, which generally meant that nobody was responsible for retention. And then one of the other discussions that we would do, or one of the questions we would place to them was, whose incentive compensation is driven around retention? And I'd normally get blank stares. So what became clear, and I'm slow, not stupid, was that acquisition was still driving the vast majority of behaviors. In 2020, when COVID hit, Keepme had just started, and it's not a great time to be starting a business by any stretch of the imagination. And we just had the team, and I needed to make a decision because going back to the story about wanting to drive a business which had the culture and the values which I had. I wanted to retain every member of the team. We did retain every single member of that team during 2020. And what we decided to do was to utilize the time to double down on the product. And we worked extensively, and people were more than happy to engage with us because they were closed, but they were still working, to help us to understand what would an ideal sales tool look like. What Keepme wanted to be at this stage was a tool that went for the full life cycle, from the pre-sale all the way into the post-membership and everything in between. Because from the pre to the post, because post recycles back in again if you do your job, the win-backs as we call them, that needed to come from one central source of record, one source of truth as such. So that's how we built it. And the first thing which we wanted to do, and one of the reasons we got a few early wins, was most lead generation is digital now. You do have your walk-in traffic, of course, but most of it is digital. So what we did was we made it incredibly easy to capture all of those digital sources, which meant that with all of your digital sources then going into one lead management tool, without the necessity to do imports, exports, spreadsheets, and the rest of the stuff, that then allowed that. We then started to apply algorithms over the top so that they could understand lead quality, right? So if you've got 200 leads coming in through the door and you've got you've got 2 salespeople, apply them to the place where they're going to be the most effective and you'll get the best results. And that's where that algorithm came in from there. And then we needed to make sure that they had the capability to be able to communicate on the platforms that the customers wanted to communicate with them, which, voice is an obvious one, and obviously email, but there was a necessity for WhatsApp to start playing a part, and SMS to play a part, and to be able to do that on a two-way communication on that particular aspect. So adding automation into that, so that when those 200 leads come through and Ian and Giles are calling the top 10 that are most likely to do, the other 80, 90 leads were going into automation, so to make sure that they were continuing to be fostered, so that when they moved up into being the probability of being a higher thing, then they hit Ian and Giles's list, and then we'd make the calls. So it's about making the organizations more efficient. It's about making sure that we don't waste anything, we capture every aspect of it, and then just as importantly, that we put workflows in place which align with how a business will want to run, so that they've got the maximum benefit from the team that they've employed.
And I guess your latest development, the content piece.
Yeah.
I think that's fascinating, and especially for these kind of multi-sites where you're potentially risking brand voice coming out wrong and that sort of thing. Can you talk me through that one?
Yeah, so that was always been, you build Keepme and you give them the insights, and they say they're fantastic, those insights. And then I say, what do we do with them? And we said, right, okay, so what you need to do is you need to obviously be engaging them. And they would go, that's fantastic. And how we do it? Well, we use automations and we use campaigns. So they start building all of these things. And then he goes, what do we put in these campaigns? What do we put in these engagements? So, and in fact, we were constantly getting asked for best practice. Well, what is the best practice? But we operate in 13 countries, and best practice in one is not going to be the same in the other. You've got multi-language, you've got multicultural, but you've also got a significant difference between, for instance, a pure gym and a gym box when it comes to brand voice. So we knew that the biggest challenge that operators have, in particular in the marketing team, is being able to put out consistent quality content. And there's a massive demand for them to be able to put out the content. I mean, you'll know yourself from your business, it's a huge challenge to constantly be building a content calendar that's going to have quality content that's going to resonate with your audience. So we looked at generative AI as being the solution here, but what we knew we'd have to do was to build the brand voice into anything that we generated. So the concept is simple, that when a customer chooses to use Keepme Creator, that Keepme Creator will first go through all of their existing content, their blog posts, their website, and anything else you want to train it on, and that will then form your brand voice. So that means that when an intern comes in and has quite correctly worked out a gap in the market for an event that's coming up, a pop-up or something along those lines, when they pop those details in, they can say, I want to generate a blog post of 250 words, which is going to be around a pop-up they're holding in Spitalfields Market on Tuesday next week with the following there. It will create it, but it will also create it in the brand voice, which means that the brand voice stays consistent. It's been popular because you can do 500-word blog posts around, vegan protein cookies if you want to, at the same time as trying to work out how to build lean mass on a vegan diet, or whatever subject matter you want. But it's also been great for when you're trying to place out creative around ads in Facebook or PPC. You can ask Keepme Creator to generate 10 PPC or 20 PPC or 50 PPC or 50 Instagram or whatever else it may be, and it will generate that content for you with the consistency and the accuracy. The strength of it is, once that's happened, you've then got the automation engine. So I can say to it very, very clearly, right, that's the content. Now I want you to send it to the 25 to 34-year-olds that have shown an interest in this, and their membership status is currently this. And not only will it create it, but then it will automatically send it, and then you can manage it coming back into the thing. So again, improving the workflow, but also giving the capability for them to be able to deliver this content out there consistently with quality.
Yeah, and like sort of ultra personalized based on what you.
Very much. I mean, we are at that stage now where nobody should get a newsletter that is not personalized to them. Okay, so if you've got an individual that's got particular beliefs around nutrition, who maybe somebody who's much more into the cardio and the lifting, someone who's a group X, someone who's into CrossFit, someone who's into High Rocks, whatever else it may be, right? I should, as a creative team, be able to build content around all of those subject matters, and then the model will decide what goes into the newsletter to meet the personal requirement of that particular member. Right, that done at scale for 5,000, 50,000, 500,000 is absolutely possible to do and can be done, which means that when I receive that newsletter, even if I still view it as the corporate or my gym's corporate newsletter, oh, hang on a second, every aspect of it is something I've got an interest in, or at least it's been excluded the stuff that I wouldn't, and therefore I'll pay attention to what I've got.
Fascinating. And I guess a thing a lot of people are worried about is the element of job security around this growing beast of AI. How do you think? I mean, do you think the fitness industry jobs are at risk? How do you think that will play out?
The technology that we've got available to us at the moment is what I would term assistive. It's there to basically ensure that repetitive tasks or tasks with a potential high error rate are done properly. They assist us to do our jobs. When I predict whether someone's going to leave, whether they're going to buy, or whether they're going to pay, I'm providing an insight to a member of the team who can then go and extract value from it. And I think the important component here is that I can build as many algorithms that predict anything that you want me to predict, but until that algorithm is then taken and then executed by a human, if you want to call it that, a member of the team, then the value doesn't get unlocked on that particular aspect of it. Do I think that AI is going to see jobs and roles go? Absolutely, yes, I do. But I think that just like every other revolution that's gone before it, it's going to refine roles and it's going to bring about brand new roles, right? So, 10 years ago, what we're doing here wasn't a thing. There was nobody doing a podcast. There was no one having the capability. These type of roles didn't even exist. This is what has evolved in this aspect of it. Now, all of that being said, do I think the leisure industry and the fitness industry? I actually don't. I'll be frank, I do not. I would not want to be a lawyer at the moment. I think a large language model is going to be able to do a lot better than the vast majorities of what lawyers can do. So their expertise premium is gone. Do I think that solicitors are a thing of the past? No, I don't. I think they're not going to be able to rely on statute or case law understanding. They're going to have to adapt and use interpersonal skills. But when I look at the leisure sector as a whole, it's very much a people-focused one. And I'm optimistic because, as an example, right, accessibility is a large part of, for a long, long time as an industry, we've been massively challenged to move beyond the set level of penetration, right? If you look at it in the United States, I think it's 20% or something along those lines. It never ever goes beyond that 20%. Somebody will throw out that we're at 25% just to get more news, but the reality is we stay about the same penetration. Accessibility is a massive challenge. With a large language model, I can very clearly define, right? And this is where the PTs will say, hang on a second, isn't that my job? I can define a bunch of characteristics and have a program built for me. So I can tell you what equipment have I got available? What duration have I got available? What's my purpose for this actual workout? Then in addition to that, I can add my bio data. I can connect my Whoop. I can connect my Apple Health. The large language model will produce a custom workout, which is, to be fair, massively more customized than I'm ever going to get from a PT who's managing 500 clients, 1,000 clients, 200 clients, whatever else. But where the accessibility comes in from, if I've got a client with a disability, as an example, if I enter that disability into a large language model, it's going to customize that plan. Now, I have a daughter with cerebral palsy, and it's a condition that has so many different variances that a customized program is absolutely essential every single time. Because the large language model has all of the capabilities around medical diagnosis as well, it can build a customized program that you won't get to see outside of a hospital setting otherwise. PTs are now going to say, well, hang on a second, what about my job on there? I think that leaves them in an elevated position because program building is not as important as the interaction that you actually have with the client. Dealing on form, dealing on instruction, being able to take on more clients, being able to maybe even increase your services to, bring on different aspects, nutrition, for instance, is all part of that particular aspect of there. And even, I've always argued that variation is an incredibly important part for adherence. And let's say, I'm going to do my math, I've got 15 stations in a gym, a mere 15, and I want to construct the workout for 10 stations, right? He's doing it in his head and he's getting there. That would give me 4,966 variations that I could do just from a large language model there and then, meaning that I'll never turn up and do the same workout at each time. It's always going to have that variety. And that lack of staleness, as well as the fact that if I add my wearables in, I know that my instructor, my all-important instructor, has got the ability to see what physiological improvement I am making beyond sitting on an in-body now and then or, throwing a HR strap on. the program itself can be modified so that, before the PT hits the floor, he goes to the platform and says, what's the up-to-date program for today? Right, we're going to be doing Olympic lifts on here. We're going to be doing this. We're going to be doing that. We're going to be doing that. Okay, repetitions are increasing on that. Weight's going up 5% on that. We need to be looking for a HR of this level here and a max HR. That is a level that they can provide for each and every one of us entering in the gym. Currently, well, we could ask PTs, but I'm going to guess that's not the way it works.
No, so it's ultimately empowering the fitness professional to deliver a far better, higher level job.
Correct. Yeah. And consistency of results as well, because when all of those variables are added in, the probability that the member is going to get the outcome that they require is significantly higher than the PT hitting the floor and going, right, what are we going to do today? What are we going to do today? And people are coming in with different things. I mean, we all know now that the change that we're seeing in the gym with the cardio moving out and the weight training becoming an increasingly important part of those particular aspects. One of the big aspects of that is that people have got different goals as well. People are looking to achieve different things. It's not about weight loss anymore. It's not just about fitness. In fact, the likes of High Rocks and these type of events coming on, there is, people are going to have demands, and that's going to, there will be PTs that will specialize in that. We are reducing the need for that to have that specialization. We are allowing the PT to hit that floor and work on form, work on instruction, and optimizing the actual time they spend together rather than trying to work out what they should do next.
And moving into PerformX and your live talk in a few weeks' time, why is that unmissable for a gym owner, gym leader, PT?
Well, I hope it's a subject matter where there is enough curiosity at the moment that people will want to come along and understand from a fitness operator's perspective why it actually matters in the first place. My ambition for the talk itself is to not only send people away with a much better understanding of why it matters, but also to provide them some takeaways on how they can, it's not about them coming in and by the end of it thinking, wow, we need Keepme, because in many, many cases, that won't be the case. But I will also show them how they can utilize some of the tools that I'm talking about, like ChatGPT and like, open source type of models, where they will be able to optimize aspects of their life, but definitely aspects of their business without the big capital cost that goes with trying to employ machine learning or data scientists, which I have.
And in general, PerformX, why is it so important that fitness professionals attend something like this?
I think because just like with me and the reading aspect of it, the necessity for continuous learning is something which you have to sort out on a regular basis. As an industry, we've seen massive evolutions over the last decade or so, predominantly technically, but also by the changing macro environment, which means that we've seen the boutiques rise up, we've seen the different concepts come through. The whole definition of fitness is now changing with the likes of the High Rockses and those type of things coming into place. So an event like PerformX is going to give people a capability to reset and understand where their business is positioned in the wider universe, which I think is an important thing. And then to be able to hone in, because if you look at your agenda, you look at some of the phenomenal people that you've got on there, we've discussed beforehand, right? Some of these people are not just industry experts, but they are exposed to the global fitness industry at a level which means that their observations are either about what is happening and you need to listen, or what will happen and therefore you should listen. So you marry that with the actual subject matter itself, which I think is relevant and has the capacity to give people value to take away from their business. And it represents currently in the United Kingdom the event with the highest probability that you're going to come away with value that could affect your business performance.
Brilliant. Now, thanks a lot for your time. Amazing to have you on.
Good to meet you.
And looking forward to your talk.
Thank you very much.